Last episode, we watched Iran survive its most violent century. The Safavids collapsed. Nader Shah rose from nothing, conquered India, stole the most famous diamond in the world, and then lost his mind. And at the very end, the Qajars took the throne. The 1800s opened with Iran technically unified under the Qajars, but deeply weakened. The treasury is thin. The army is outdated. The infrastructure that Abbas built 2 centuries ago is a memory. And into this moment of vulnerability walked 2 of the most powerful empires the modern world had ever produced. From the north, the Russian Empire. From the south, the British Empire. Iran didn't invite them, but Iran didn't have the power to stop them. Welcome to the great game. Let's meet the Qajars properly. Aga Muhammad Khan, the founder, was one of the most ruthless figures in Iranian history. He unified the country through absolute terror, established Tehran as the new capital, and was assassinated by his own servants in 1797, before he could even consolidate everything he'd built. His nephew Fath Ali Shah took over, and here is where the Qajar story gets complicated. Fath Ali Shah was not a bad man. He was cultured. He patronized the arts. He had an extraordinary beard that court painters clearly enjoyed drawing. But Fath Ali Shah came to power at the exact moment that 2 modernizing empires with professional armies, industrial weapons, and centuries of colonial experience decided that Central Asia was their next project. His court, for all its cultural sophistication, was not equipped for what was coming. The collision came fast. Russia had been expanding southward for decades, absorbing the Caucasus piece by piece. Iran, which had historically controlled Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, watched as Russian forces pushed deeper into territories the Safavids had once governed. The First Russo-Persian War ended in 1813 with the Treaty of Gulistan. Iran lost Georgia and most of the northern Caucasus permanently. It was a humiliation, but worse, it was a warning that nobody in Tehran took seriously enough. The Second Russo-Persian War, from 1826 to 1828, was even more catastrophic. Crown Prince Abbas Mirza led the Iranian army with genuine courage and real military reforms he had been working on for years. It wasn't enough. The Treaty of Turkmenchay in 1828 forced Iran to surrender Azerbaijan and Yerevan, modern-day Armenia, permanently, to pay a massive war indemnity and to accept humiliating trade concessions. It remains one of the most painful treaties in Iranian historical memory. But here's the detail that made Turkmenchay particularly stinging. The treaty was partly negotiated with British assistance. Britain, officially Iran's ally against Russia, had its own interests in limiting Iranian power. Iran was learning a brutal lesson about the nature of great game diplomacy. From the south, British pressure was subtler, but equally consequential. Britain's primary concern was protecting its crown jewel, India, and that meant controlling Afghanistan as a buffer state between Russian expansion and British India. Iran, which had historical claims to the city of Herat in western Afghanistan, attempted to reassert control in 1856. Britain immediately declared war, the Anglo-Persian War, and forced Iran to renounce all claims to Afghan territory in the Treaty of Paris. The pattern was becoming clear. From the north, Russia took land. From the south, Britain took influence. Iran was being shaped, its borders defined, its options limited, not by its own choices, but by the strategic calculations of 2 empires that viewed it primarily as a buffer zone and a market. But here is where the story takes a genuinely remarkable turn, because Iranians, the people, not just the rulers, began to fight back. Not with armies, with something the Qajars hadn't expected: organized public resistance. In 1890, Nasser al-Din Shah, the longest-reigning Qajar monarch, granted a British company a complete monopoly over Iran's entire tobacco industry. Every tobacco farmer, every merchant, every seller in Iran would now operate under British control. The profits would flow to London. The reaction was unlike anything the Qajar court had seen. Grand Ayatollah Mirza Shirazi issued a fatwa, a religious ruling, declaring that smoking tobacco was forbidden as long as the monopoly existed. Overnight, across Iran, people stopped smoking. Completely! Even in the royal harem, the Shah's own wives reportedly stopped smoking in solidarity. Nasser al-Din Shah reportedly walked into his own household and couldn't find a single lit pipe. The monopoly was cancelled within a year. Iran had just discovered what collective resistance could do. The tobacco protest wasn't just a victory over one concession. It was a proof of concept. It demonstrated that the clergy, the merchants, and the people could coordinate. That public pressure could override royal decisions. That Iran had a civil society capable of acting. That idea would not be forgotten. Nasser al-Din Shah is one of the most fascinating contradictions in Iranian history. He reigned for nearly 50 years, 1848 to 1896, and he genuinely wanted to modernize Iran. He traveled to Europe 3 times. He was fascinated by photography, technology, and Western institutions. He established Iran's first modern university, the Dar ol-fonun. In 1851, he invited European teachers. He began building telegraph lines. He wanted the tools of modernity without the political reforms that modernity demanded. And that was the paradox. He wanted railways and telegraphs and newspapers, but not constitutions and parliaments and limits on royal power. He wanted a modern Iran that was still an absolute monarchy. History, as it turned out, had opinions about that combination. He was assassinated in 1896, shot by a follower of the revolutionary thinker Jamal al-Din al-Afghani, just one day before he was to celebrate his 50th year on the throne. His successor, Mozaffar al-Din Shah, inherited a country that was ready to boil over. Mozaffar al-Din Shah was weak, ill, and perpetually short of money. His solution, like his predecessors, was to borrow from Russia and Britain in exchange for more concessions. Each loan came with strings. Each string pulled Iran further from sovereignty. By 1905, the pressure had become unbearable. Merchants were being undercut by foreign goods. Intellectuals who had studied in Europe were returning with dangerous ideas about rights and representative government. Clerics were furious about foreign influence over Iranian economic life. For the first time in Iranian history, all 3 groups were angry at the same time about the same things. The spark came in December 1905, when the governor of Tehran ordered the beating of several sugar merchants who had protested foreign competition. The response was immediate and extraordinary. Thousands of Iranians took sanctuary in mosques and in the grounds of the Shah's own summer palace, refusing to leave until their demands were met. Their central demand was something Iran had never had: a house of justice, a representative body that would limit the Shah's absolute power and give Iranians a say in how they were governed. The word being whispered in tea houses and shouted in protest gatherings was new to Persian political vocabulary. Mozaffar al-Din Shah, exhausted and ill, signed the constitutional decree in August 1906. Iran became a constitutional monarchy. A parliament, the Majlis, was established. For the first time in its history, Iran had a written constitution limiting royal power. It was, by any measure, a revolution. So, what did the 1800s give Iran? It gave Iran its wounds, the permanent border losses to Russia that Iranians still discuss today. It gave Iran its humiliations, the concessions, the debt, the foreign hands shaping its economy. But it also gave Iran something it had never had before. It gave Iran a constitution, a parliament, a civil society that had proven it could organize, resist, and win. The people who had been subjects for 2,500 years had just declared themselves citizens. That change, however fragile, however contested, would define everything that came next. Next episode, the 1900s. Iran enters the 20th century with a constitution, a parliament, and more hope than it has felt in a long time. And within 2 years, That constitution will be suspended by cannon fire. A new Shah will shell his own parliament building. Russia and Britain will sign a secret agreement literally dividing Iran between their spheres of influence, without telling Iran. Then, just when it seems like Iran might finally be able to catch its breath, something extraordinary happens under Iranian soil. Something black. Something that the entire world wants. Something that will make the great game look like a warm-up act. The discovery of oil in 1908 will turn Iran from a chess piece into the most contested prize on the planet. Episode 5, the 20th century, is where Iran's story becomes the whole world story. This has been 100 years of Iran. See you in the next century.